Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be a review of Uncorked, which is a film that was recently released on Netflix. The plot summary of the film is it's about a man called Elijah who was set to inherit his family's small business, which is a restaurant, and his father is putting pressure on him to step up to the plate, but his true passion is to become a sommelier, and we see him following that dream, but we also see the impact it has on his relationship with his father. So in terms of the film, obviously it's written and directed by the same writer and director of Insecure, and a notable member of the cast is Niecy Nash. But in terms of the tone of the film, I wouldn't label this film a comedy. The opening scene, I kind of felt that it could be a comedy because it was a bit cheesy, definitely had that American cheese. It's the classic two young women are coming into the shop being loud, talking about their bad relationship, saying they can't leave a man because they have a good deed. Typical meme comedy, which might make you believe that this could be like a comedy drama, but I think for the most part it is quite serious. There is some comedic elements here and there, but it's mostly drama centered. In terms of the comedic elements, obviously, as I said, Niecy Nash is in it. I was a bit underwhelmed by the comedic elements. I just kind of felt like I personally expected a bit more. I feel like in terms of Niecy Nash's inclusion in the film, I don't think they utilised her as the comedic powerhouse that she is, and I was dying for it, I was starving for it, and they just did not give it to us. I think if it was going to be a dead serious film, then okay, maybe I could give it a pass, but the fact that they did have comedy elements in it, I just feel like they should have took it further and just given us the classic Niecy Nash. And I know a lot of Niecy Nash fans might be a bit disappointed and feel a bit malnourished from what they've given us. The comedy was quite basic, and I feel like the rest of the film was quite basic as well. The story was basic in terms of the narrative, this whole sommelier thing. For those of you who don't know what a sommelier is, it's basically a wine professional that's typically at restaurants that can recommend you the best wine. That's what a sommelier is. And in terms of the whole sommelier storyline, at first it was a little bit interesting with the whole corner shop interaction, but I'm not sure it really did go anywhere. Obviously we see him in action training to be the sommelier. It wasn't very interesting. It felt very educational rather than entertainment, and I lost interest quite quickly. For most people, sommelier content is probably not going to be interesting, but I've seen so many films and so many TV shows where they've upgraded simple content to make it entertaining and engaging, and I struggled to be engaged. Because I just found the storyline to be, and I think a key part of why I found that storyline boring is because they didn't really build the world of the sommelier properly. I feel like it was very rushed. I feel like even though it was a considerably long film, I feel like it was really rushed. I feel like we only got bits of the competitiveness in rations. Initially I was engaged, but then it was like, okay, we're hearing him say the words, we're seeing him spit in the cup, we're seeing him study. Kind of just like I'm watching a YouTube video of somebody studying. And I think the characters that were including in it were, again, there wasn't much development. He had a villain, then he was the friend, then he went off. What was the point of him being there in the first place? I'm not sure if his character was even necessary, if we gained anything from that character. And there was a lot of parts while I was watching it, I was like, what am I gaining from this as an audience member? And I feel like a lot of people are going to feel like that. I personally needed a bit more. I'm not sure whether it was the acting, directing, or the writing. It was just a bit lackluster to me overall, the script. In terms of the characters, I feel like the characters were solid, but again, I feel like the acting was lackluster. I was disappointed with Niecy Nash because I know that she's a powerhouse. I don't think she was utilised. The main character was decent, but again, I kind of felt like he was a one-note character. There was numerous emotional events in the film, but sometimes I didn't feel like those emotions of those characters who were reacting to emotional events came through. I didn't feel any emotional connection, especially with Elijah when a significant event happens in the film, I didn't believe that he was upset about it. I didn't believe that he was devastated about it. I saw the tears, but I didn't see the emotion. I think in terms of the character, thing that I could note as a positive, I think was probably the family dynamic. That felt natural. It felt like they were actually family. But in terms of characterization as a whole, I think there was a lack of development there in terms of character building as well as performance. I feel like they weren't pushed far enough emotionally, considering the amount of emotions that come into play with this story. I'd say most of the cinematography was fine, but there was one particular scene that I had to point out that just was lit really badly, like to the point where I had to put my brightness all the way up so I could see the characters. And even when I did put my brightness all the way up, it just didn't look nice. And it was a shot where Elijah and his love interest are in, there's like a low lit bedroom shot, and it just did not look nice. And another pet peeve of mine was the soundtrack and the soundtrack score. I don't know, it's just a pet peeve for me when in films, I think in TV shows there's a little bit of leeway, but I feel like in films, when your soundtrack doubles as your score for most of the film, I feel like that is a bit lazy. And I think they had a kind of hip-hop trap soundtrack. They had some hip-hop track instrumentals in there to act as the scores in there, but again, it felt very generic. It felt like it was taken out of the archives. Because of the whole Savalier stuff, it is a training course, you know, to recommend fine wines. I would have liked to have heard sounds that you'd associate with places or restaurants that would have a Savalier, would sell fine wines. So some classical music in there, or even a mix and match. So like the film Moonlight, what it does really well is it has a kind of epic orchestra, but it has a cork and screw in it, which we typically hear with hip hop beats, but they mix it together. I would have liked to hear something like that if they were going to go down the, you know, hip hop urban meets fine wine vibe that they were going with. So yeah, I would have liked a bit more creativity with the soundtrack. I mean, overall, even though most of the stuff that I said sounds a bit like negative, it wasn't like a bad film, but it wasn't great either. It became quickly background noise. I wouldn't say not watch it, but again, I'd say I wouldn't prioritize this film. I think if I had to say like the best part of the film, I'd probably say the family dynamic. And I guess overall, it does have a good message. It has a message of following your dreams, you know, not living through your parents and stuff like that. And, you know, parents having to adapt and support their kids. I think that is a good message, but I think that message isn't enough to carry the film at the quality that it was. And from, you know, a project that is linked to Insecure in some way, I was expecting a little bit more. I think overall the tone, if I was to describe it as something, I'd probably say it is like, it felt like to me of like a first episode of a TV show that was a very like average episode, and we were just waiting to see what was to come. And I never saw what was to come, and what was to come never came. That was what I would describe this whole film like. So taking everything into account, I would rate it half marks, a 2.5 out of 5. If you haven't watched it, let me know if this was or is a film that you are interested in watching. If you have watched it, let me know what you thought of the film, and let me know what you would rate it out of 5. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you have, don't forget to press that notification bell so you know when the next review is dropping. Till next time, guys, bye.